This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome back to Singapore for a sizzler of what we hope could be a championship decider as well. This is round 17 of the Formula One World Championship. Darkness has descended the paddock. It's still slightly oppressive, still pretty warm as well, but it does look like a mighty impressive circuit. The challenge that awaits these drivers is always so impressive around this Singapore race circuit. We haven't been here for 3 years. We are delighted to be back. Earlier on today, we've already had free practice one in the kind of lights going to twilight of the evening. Now we get ready for free practice 2, and I can tell you, Lewis Hamilton was fastest in our earlier session, ahead of the birthday boy Max Verstappen, who turns 25 today. Jack Nichols is our lead commentator, and Jack, I think a lot of Mercedes fans, certainly here at the track that I've been speaking to in between the sessions, have got themselves very excited about the possibility of Lewis Hamilton winning a first race this year. And okay, they might be getting a little carried away, but why not dream? Live the dream, Jack.
Because that's when your dreams get crushed.
Oh no!
That's the answer, Jenny. Because they'd have been dreaming in Miami, crushed. Dreaming in Zandvoort, crushed. That's why you don't dream. You look at the available data and you try and surmise the most accurate outcome considering that. And the available data is Hamilton was quick in free practice 1. But we've seen Mercedes quick in free practices before and nothing's come of it. So maybe they can get their first win, but I think it's not the time to get too excited. What's more likely, Hamilton winning the Grand Prix or Verstappen winning the title? Discuss.
There you go,
that's
kids.
a good one.
Don't dream.
Mark Priestley, we haven't introduced you yet, so hold your horse, otherwise
sorry.
you'll be speaking and people will be like, who is that? A voice from above, I don't know.
Everyone knows who Mark Priestley is.
Well, F1 Elvis is in the building, everybody. Former F1 mechanic at McLaren. Are you a believer?
Yeah, I'm a believer, yeah. Welcome to a cheery afternoon.
Panel ever.
Look, I don't think that what we saw this morning from Lewis Hamilton has any real reflection on the fact that they, are a contender for this race. I'm not saying they're not, because they could be, but it's not a circuit that we would have probably, before coming to the place, would have had it down as a Mercedes opportunity. It's a bumpy circuit. Their car doesn't like bumps. Getting the car onto the brakes is really, controlled under braking is a difficult one for them. So look, they've done a very good start to the day, certainly in the hands of Lewis Hamilton. Let's see if they can develop as the circuit evolves over the rest of the weekend.
I'm going to be a believer then. If you two naysayers aren't going to jump on the bandwagon,
It's called BBC impartiality.
It's called being excited about what could potentially happen. I'm not rooting for anyone, but I'm just thinking this is an exciting place to be when Mercedes are topping the timesheet with a Lewis Hamilton. And he has won a race in every single season he's competed in this sport. He's on the precipice of losing that record. No one wants that. That's all I'm saying. Right, who needs to do better? Who needs to improve? He needs to find form in this session. Go.
Ferrari are a little adrift based on that first session. Leclerc didn't actually lose out too much in terms of running, even though he had a problem right at the start of the session, so they could do with finding a bit. Haven't seen anything yet from McLaren. Aston Martin are really interesting because Stroll was 8th quickest, Vettel was 11th quickest, but both used only the medium tyres. Neither went out on the soft, so I'm interested to see what happens with them this evening.
And Jack, we didn't ever really discuss what we were going to, which is the point that you raised, which is more likely, Verstappen winning the championship here or Hamilton winning the race here or winning a race this year?
Winning the race here.
Winning the race here, that makes more sense. Discuss?
I actually, okay, this'll make you happy. I think it's more likely that Hamilton wins the Grand Prix than Verstappen wins the championship this weekend.
Interesting.
It's a bit of a, do you know what I mean? It's a difficult one to get your head around, actually, but I think that's why. What do you reckon?
Well, I think it's one of those that if it's a sort of, if we're talking about the pace of the cars and drivers, Max Verstappen will probably win this Grand Prix. but he won't win the championship because the others around him will be close enough to keep it alive.
Agreed. That's the most likely outcome.
That's not the question you were asked.
No, but hang on. But this isn't a normal Grand Prix because this is a street circuit, and it's a proper street circuit. It's faster than Monaco. If you have an accident, if you make a mistake, it tends to be quite a big one. It tends to flip the race on its head, and that is the one thing that I think, if Max Verstappen goes on to win the race, as many people would expect him to do, there is no reason, or no, it's not out of the question to think that Charles Leclerc or his teammate Sergio Perez may not finish the Grand Prix, either through a technical problem or an accident. It's a race of attrition, so I don't think it's quite as far-fetched that he could win it this weekend as some might.
He has to get a gap of 22 points to his closest rival, Charles Leclerc, which would mean him having to win this race. Either way, if he's going to win the championship here in Singapore, he must win the race. That's the easiest one of the kind of headlines to give you. Time is ticking away. Session is about to start. It's started already, don't tell anyone. Jack Nicholls, over to you.
Again, it's both Alfa Romeos straight out on circuit at the start of free practice 2. For those of you watching along, the session has 59 minutes and 13, 12, 11, 10. I got a bit confused there because the helicopter picture froze, didn't it? But we got through it. Hashtag BBC F1, F1 at bbc.co.uk if you want to get in touch, of course, as usual. So, Bottas and Zhou out on circuit. Latifi, Russell, Schumacher all leaving the pits. Medium tyres for Bottas, hard tyres for Zhou. Medium for Latifi, medium for Russell. Schumacher going out on the hards, and we'll see what we've got. It was a 1 minute 43.033 for Hamilton that he set earlier on. Less than a tenth quicker than Verstappen. It was 4 tenths back to Leclerc in third, and then 8 tenths to Perez and a second to Russell. So again, it's also a long circuit here, isn't it? So you kind of get that spread of lap time a little bit more. There are more places to gain and lose time compared to like an Austria or something like that, which is really short with only about 4 corners.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a huge amount comes from, we talked about earlier, comes from driver confidence. So getting your driver into the groove, getting him into the right zone, making sure that he gradually builds his confidence, and what comes with that, of course, is lap time. But it can be interrupted by a problem. You know, Charles Leclerc had a braking issue at the start of FP1, which put him in the garage for a while. Carlos Sainz had a couple of moments where he narrowly managed to keep it out the wall. George Russell did touch the wall this morning. Those little incidents that happen in the practice sessions, all right, it was FP1, so there's still plenty of time to recover, but they just knock your confidence a tiny bit. And the perfect weekend comes from gradually building that confidence until you get to the big moment, Saturday afternoon, when it really counts. Qualifying's really important around this track, and that's when you've got to have maximum confidence and a car that does exactly what you expect it to do.
So Russell out on circuit on the medium tyre. Hamilton has just left the pits on the medium tyre as well. Verstappen and Perez still in the pits. The McLaren of Norris still in the pits. Ricciardo has gone out on the hard compound of tyre. As Russell comes underneath the grandstand with the sort of light beams going across underneath the grandstand, and then through the final couple of corners and out across the line. Bottas is on a lap at the moment. He is a second quicker than Zhou in sector 1. Zhou is out on the hard tyres. Zhou re-signed for next season with Alfa Romeo. It's not the biggest topic in the world, but still, on your thoughts?
It's great for him. I think it'll be, these moments when you get your future decided often have a massive bearing on your performance, don't they? Because confidence plays such a part in this. So if you're psychologically settled, you know you've got some security, you can focus on the driving, and quite often that's what we see. Performances just stepping up once somebody's got that contract in the bag. So great news for him. I think he deserves it. I think he's it's not been quite as consistent as anyone would have perhaps hoped, but he has had some great performances, and look, I think he's got plenty of room to improve still, but that's what you want.
Jenny?
Yeah, I think it's important that Zhou was re-signed, actually. He brings a freshness to this paddock that I haven't seen in quite some time. He's young, dynamic, he dresses impeccably. The Chinese markets absolutely love him. He is a huge star over there, and thus it's important that we have him in this sport, quite frankly, and I think he's done well enough this season to earn his place there. He and Bottas get on quite well. I just think it'd be nice if the car was a little bit more reliable and able to challenge a little bit more. We haven't really seen that so much.
And I think broadly speaking, my opinion is the same for Tsunoda, in that, yeah, ups and downs, but actually he's been all right at times this season and matched Gasly enough. And I think that everybody talks about, well, Nick de Vries is and you know what? I might be ripping off Ed Straw here on the race. If I am, I don't really care. But I think he wrote something about this where the Nick de Vries thing shows the lack of drivers coming through the junior formula at the moment, or the perceived lack of drivers coming through. Because there was a time, you know, when people would get drives, for example, you know, when Russell wasn't in a drive, or when people weren't in seats, and there would be outrage and consternation, and you were like, this is ridiculous that he hasn't got a seat. Here's Latifi's radio.
Yeah, I don't know, 1 second. There's something not quite right with my belts.
Are you okay to drive?
Compromise the LF here. Yeah, I just need to tighten them more.
Okay, Gasly's behind you.
I don't know, they're not
2 seconds.
sitting on my shoulders properly. I don't know why my shoulder's like sticking on something when I'm turning.
Copy.
Latifi struggling with his belts. Yeah, there's not a huge sort of wave of junior drivers coming through at the moment who are looking, you know, really, really great is what I would say. And I know we're going to get hashtag BBC F1. Oh, Drugovich has dominated F2, and agreed, he's been very good. But there's nobody out there at the moment for which it's an outrage if they don't get a seat, in the way that it kind of was with Piastri, let's say, this year.
I was just going to say that. He's probably the closest to that, isn't he?
And but now he's got a seat. Now, if he didn't have a seat, then yeah, it's an outrage. But at the moment, there's not. So give Joe some more time. Give Tsunoda some more time. Even honestly, Mick Schumacher, for me personally, it's like, well, okay, he's struggled, but then he's got better. Kevin Magnussen was very interesting about that yesterday, saying he's started to drive more on instinct rather than science, and you can't do that in F1, so he needs to go back to that. Anyway, all of these things. But if there were loads of kids knocking at the door, when it's Leclerc and Russell and Norris all fighting it out in F2 or whatever, you're like, no, you've had your chance, off you pop. But there isn't that much pressure, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's what I mean, sorry. So when Nick de Vries comes in and he's great, everyone's like, well, suddenly there's this clamour to sign Nick de Vries.
Yeah.
There was no clamour when he won the championship in Formula 2 in 2019. Everyone was a bit like, but now there's clamour.
I agree with you. I think I agree with you. I think the reason I think that some of these young drivers, it's great that they're getting a little bit more time, is because this is, don't forget, a brand new season with brand new cars, and these cars are very different. The way the cars produce downforce, and therefore the way you have to drive them, is very different to anything they'll have ever driven before. It's not like a Formula 2 car, it's not like a Formula 3 car. These are brand new and they are sort of revolutionary. So to give the drivers a little bit of time to get to grips with that, to start developing their style to suit the car, to start developing the cars. Don't forget, with the cars being brand new, there's loads of scope to tweak and develop and improve those cars. The teams are still finding opportunities every week. So I think it's fair enough, and it's great that some of these young drivers are getting an opportunity to just get a little bit more time. I think it's justified, and I think the sport will be better for it.
I absolutely agree with you, Mark, and I think it's not always easy to tell who's going to shine in these cars from what they do in the junior formula, and who will come up and be overwhelmed and not be able to prosper in this championship. And I think de Vries is an absolutely case study on that. As you say, no one was clamouring for him. Now he's gone out there, done a few free practice sessions, everybody's clamouring for him. And I think maybe we have to see more people coming up, more people getting tests in F1 cars, more people being able to try and come through to prove their talents, and just open the door a bit wider. That's kind of what I'd like to see.
How would you do it, Jenny? Because it is. I agree with you, but it's tough, isn't it? Because there's no testing like we used to have. That was the obvious opportunity. Drivers used to come in as test drivers. We don't have that anymore. You get an FP1 session is the best you can really do, or a simulator. So how do you get these guys the opportunities and open that door wider?
Maybe F1 needs to... And it could also help with developing this championship and making sure that we get better overtaking and better data and better information. If F1 ran its own car.
Everything okay, Cal?
Yep.
Team radio.
Took this gate, bro.
Magnussen went straight on. What do you mean if there was an F1 team in F1?
Yeah. Yes. It's
Wow.
just a crazy out there thought, but
That is crazy.
why not?
Well, can you imagine the conversations if they start winning and it's Formula One, a Formula One team, Formula One make the rules, they run the sport. Does there... I mean, I don't know, I'm speculating, but look, I agree with you. I'd love to see more chance to get kids into Formula One cars, but it is a tricky one to achieve.
I think that, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel particularly aggrieved by the current young driver Formula One situation, honestly. When was the last time, really, we had a driver miss out on F1 who deserved to be there? I mean, the only one maybe is Alex Albon, because he wasn't making it to F1, but then it was a last minute. What happened? Someone went somewhere, didn't they? What happened to let Albon in? Because he was at pre-season testing for Formula E for Nissan, and then he suddenly got called up. What happened?
Well, it was a Red Bull driver sacking, wasn't it?
Yeah, was it Hartley? No.
Yeah, it might have been.
Might have been Hartley. Anyway, I can't remember what it was, but Albon wasn't getting into F1. It was Hartley and Kvyat, and it all went south. So Albon arguably wasn't getting into F1 until, like, he did. But that's the only real example, I think, in recent memory where a driver who deserved, arguably, to be in F1 didn't get in. But even then, honestly, I don't think we're just getting a replay of George Russell doing exactly what he did earlier on. Absolutely identical. Didn't hit the barrier this time.
Amazing.
But absolutely identical incident to the one he had in free practice 1, where he went straight on at turn 11 and 12. Here's his radio.
Don't really know why this is consistently happening.
Russell saying, don't really know why this is consistently happening. Fernando Alonso has had a very close brush with the wall as well, coming into 19 and 20. But yeah, for me, I don't think there's many examples in recent years of... And that was what I was going to say. Albon, okay, but there was no way Albon in his junior career was seen as, this guy's got to be in F1. Like, this guy's a superstar, megastar. He looked very, very good in his junior career, and he is proving to be very, very good in Formula One. He's proving to be quite a way adrift of Max Verstappen when they were teammates at Red Bull. He's now proving that he can beat Nicholas Latifi fairly comfortably, and Nick de Vries was able to come in and beat Nicholas Latifi as well. So I don't know, I just can't help but think we're not really missing out on the young talent, because we have Leclerc, we have Norris, you have Verstappen coming through, and you have Piastri coming in next year, you have George Russell coming through. I feel like if you're at the top, you do make it in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I don't think I can argue with that. I think as a sport, it would be great to just have more opportunity, because what it does is it just increases the entire flow of drivers through the entire system. And at a time when we're trying to cast the net wider, this is an elitist sport. Very few people actually ever get the chance to get into motorsport or motor racing at a young age. So if we can start to increase the flow of drivers, it probably has a knock-on effect all the way down the stream. But I agree with you. I think if you're good enough and you shine brightly enough, people will see you and you will find a way in. So perhaps it's not a huge issue. But yeah, I'm sure people with much higher paid jobs than me are constantly looking at it and finding ways to make it happen.
Jenny, what would your F1 team be called? F1 team?
So, yeah, well, I mean, why not?
The F1 team.
Say what it is. I'd say what it is. Charles Leclerc at the back of the Ferrari garage, just having a little drinky poos from his... He's got 2 drinks bottles. He must have 2 different drinks in there. He's smiling now because he knows I'm talking about him. He's got his overalls around his waist. He's got some headphones in. I'm getting moved out the way because Carlos Sainz is about to come in, so the Ferrari mechanics have just asked me to shuffle out the way so I don't get squished. But yes, Carlos Sainz is out and circulating. I can't see from here how many laps he's done. I'm sure you guys have that in front of you. But interesting that Leclerc's not out, and both of the Red Bulls are in the garage and having work done to them, just set up changes for Red Bull. But this is another chunk of session that Charles Leclerc is missing and is still at the back of the garage and still not going anywhere.
Yeah, interesting 5 laps so far for Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton, though, is on a flyer. He's coming through, or just gone through the middle sector, coming towards the end of his lap. Underneath the grandstand he goes. First 2 sectors purple so far. We'll see how it matches up to anything that went on this morning, but drivers now just starting to push things a little further. It's a more representative session. Let's see how he does, coming out the final corner and onto the start-finish straight, and he crosses the line. He goes quickest, and it's a 1:43.6.
So that's 0.6 of a second slower than he managed in free practice 1 earlier on today. He was on the soft tyres, then he's on the medium tyres now. He's 0.04 ahead of Carlos Sainz in second place. Alonso third, Russell fourth, Ocon fifth. And then it is Stroll, Bottas, Vettel, Gasly, Magnussen, the top 10. Joe, Albon, Tsunoda, Norris and Ricciardo, the top 15. Schumacher, Latifi, the 17 drivers to have set the lap time. Hamilton's almost gone into the back of one of the Williams, and it was Latifi. Verstappen, Perez and Leclerc, as Jenny was saying, all still in the pit lane at the moment. Hashtag BWSF1. Martial Time says, I've got some minced beef for this evening. How should I cook it? Bolognese, burgers, chili, anything else?
Bolognese.
You're a Bolognese man.
Bolognese, yeah.
We got meatballs from the producer. I'm gonna float lasagna, maybe a bit of lasagna. But you can't go wrong with a burger. Just if you do a burger, don't season the meat. You mustn't season the meat when you're making it and you're making the patties. You can only season it after, once you've made them into patties. It's a fact. It's a fact. You can put the salt on them before you fry them, but not in the mixture when you're mixing up the meat, because that will dry it out in an instant. So that's my one tip of the day.
This is why everyone's here. This is the content.
Who's here? Who's listening? Is anyone listening?
Is there anyone out there?
43 minutes and 27 seconds left on the clock. Hamilton's still out there. Sainz has just left the pits again. Still on the medium tyres for the Ferrari team. 400ths slower than Hamilton. Yuki Tsunoda's improving on this lap as he comes around the final couple of corners. The quick left-handers at 22 and 23. And Tsunoda goes up into 10th place on the medium tyre. Again, Stroll is up there in 6th. Only a 10th behind Ocon. Ocon, to be fair, is half a second behind Alonso, but he's up there with the AlphaTauri, so this could be a good day for Aston Martin.
Yeah.
So far this season, every time it looks like they're going to have a good day, it kind of goes awry, or usually qualifying's wet and they come a cropper, but it could be a good weekend.
It could be, yeah. Definitely one to keep an eye on for them. It's one of those circuits that, I mean, a little bit like Monaco, you need some very specific characteristics in your car to do well around here, as well as all the confidence issues that I talked about earlier on with the driver perspective. A very certain type. You need a compliant car that can use the bumps or ride the bumps, that can use some curbs. You've got to have great traction and braking capabilities. There's a lot of big stops, a lot of slow corners, not really anything in the way of high-speed corners here, so it's very high downforce. And if you've got a car where all of those elements come together, you will have a distinct advantage around here. It may mean that it costs you other circuits, but here there could be an opportunity for those people. So between the two sessions, what's happened is we have been plunged into darkness. FP1 was done in the daylight. Now we are in representative session. Representative conditions, very, very dark. As that's Gasly, who has... that is...
Yeah, Gazzo.
Yeah, Gasly, who's just had a little moment, gone down an escape road, but I think he's managed to recover it, and he'll get going again.
Turn 18.
Yeah. But yeah, between the sessions we've got slightly different conditions in terms of the darkness. The floodlights on now, of course. The temperature's dropped a little bit, but also during those sessions, or in the gap between the sessions, the teams had the opportunity to pull the cars apart, to make changes, to get the feedback from the driver, download that data, of course, and analyse it, and make some tweaks and adjustments to the setup of the car. And now is that first opportunity to really try and see what it's got. So people just starting to wind things up and really push with a view towards qualifying and, of course, the race on Sunday.
41 minutes and 5 seconds to go. Carlos Sainz is just coming through the middle sector now. We'll see how he is compared to Hamilton. He was improving in the first sector, and after the middle sector, he's 700ths down on Hamilton. George Russell is improving too. He's only 2/10 adrift of Hamilton's time. Hamilton is back in the pits, so we'll just see Sainz and Russell around the end of this lap. Sainz is ahead of... he's behind Russell on the circuit. Russell is just coming into the final couple of corners. Sainz is coming under the grandstand through turn 19. Bit of a correction on the exit. Out across the line comes Russell, and he does not improve. He went 2 tenths slower than he managed previously. Carlos Sainz, though, goes to the top of the times. A 1 minute 43.2, found 4 tenths on Hamilton, all in the final sector. And they're not particularly different, the sectors here. It's not exactly Spa, is it, with sectors 1 and 2?
Yeah, slightly quicker corners in the last part, but not, yeah, you're right, not by very much. It was actually Hamilton also, his strongest sector was the final one. So some improvements made by the look of it to the Ferrari. Still had a couple of moments. He still had a little twitch in corners, still not entirely planted, that car, but perhaps there's still more scope to make those little improvements. But the jump between FP1 and FP2 seems like a positive one for Ferrari.
Bethany says Ricciardo went to Renault. That was it. So Ricciardo went to Renault, and then they all ran out of places. So thank you for that.
Well done, Beth.
There's a few comments. Make the sprint races just for junior drivers. There's an interesting thought. But then that would take away the kind of point of the sprint races, I suppose. Jenny, is that Ferrari?
Yes, I am. They're still in the garage, actually. I just hovered down to Red Bull to take a look what was happening down there. Furious work going on Sergio Perez's car. They've just sent Verstappen out on a new set of the hard tyres. And if I just wander back up, they're just waiting to welcome Sainz back into their pit box. But I think I can get through in time, Team Radio.
Yes, I thought that.
Gasly going straight on and apologising.
Fortunately, let me get up here. And so they've done some work on the car after free practice 1. Setup work, they say. But looking at the Ferrari, Team Radio.
I don't know what this AlphaTauri is doing.
All right.
Pick a side of the track and stay there.
Latifi annoyed at an AlphaTauri.
So the car isn't being worked on at all? The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc? I can't see. He was at the back of the garage. Can't see him now. But nothing going on.
You say
it's
that,
so
though,
weird.
Jenny. There are more than one way to work on a car. You could be working on it from a computer behind the screens, and it may be that it's having software or code uploaded. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, as well as the mechanical things that could be happening that they might be just waiting for.
Well, they've got the Absolute Tracker. You might be able to tell people more about that. I think it's the scanner, isn't it, that they use for the car. They've got that in front of the car looking at it. Then they've got a blue wire coming out from the gantry going in what looks like to the back of the car as well. One of the mechanics just... so the blue wire is actually just for the hydraulics and the jack, so it can go up and down in the air. But it's fascinating what you say. Tell us more if you can.
Well, quite often, you know, these cars are incredibly complex. They run very complex systems in terms of the computer systems, the code that runs things like the engine, the diff, the gearbox. And you can make some really significant changes to the car simply by rewriting or modifying or uploading a new batch of code to the car. That can transform it. It changes all the options you have on the steering wheel in terms of different maps. And to do that, you know, you don't need to be anywhere near the car necessarily. You're just plugged in via the umbilical cord that goes up into the garage system. So we can make massive changes to the cars without actually touching them. So it could be that something like that's happening.
Verstappen's out on a set of hard tyres. He's only a 10th down on Sainz in Sector 1. Great burn here from Gus. No seasoning when mixing meat. No wonder the commentating is so bland on BBC F1. I like that one. It's only when you're mixing burger patty for burger patties. All other meat season. Jago says very meaty today on hashtag BBC F1. That is very true. I'd forgotten about David Coulthard earlier on today. Simon says, first time I remember anyone in F2 missing out on F1 despite winning the title is Giorgio Pantano in 2008. And that is true. And there are some people in the paddock who still love a bit of Giorgio Pantano, or Pantano, I don't know how you're saying it. Roxy says tacos would be the way to go on a Friday. Didn't think of tacos, but minced beef tacos are good. And David says, I'm guessing Jack's going to call his burger the Gerhard burger. And you are absolutely right.
Very good.
Absolutely superb. And Matt says kofta curry is the best use of minced beef. There you go. Plenty of options for you now for your evening's cooking. Verstappen goes 5th at 1 minute 44.645 on the hard tyres. 1.4 seconds slower than Carlos Sainz. He's the only one of the front runners out on circuit at the moment. Albon has just done a lap on the soft, so he's the first driver to go on the soft tyres, jumps up into 8th place, and said he was obviously frustrated watching the Grand Prix in Monza from the hospital because things had felt so good on the Friday, and apparently they were monitoring his heart rate and everything while he was watching the race on Sunday, because they were a bit worried he would get a bit too wound up watching it and wouldn't be good for his rest, which was quite amusing.
It is good to have him back, though. I mean, it is frustrating. It's got to be frustrating particularly with a team like Williams, who typically struggle at most places to go to a circuit where your car comes alive, and there's these opportunities when everyone else is taking engine penalties and you're not in the seat and you're watching some other guy take your seat and do a wonderful job in it. It's got to be, I mean, it's got to be annoying on one hand, positive because your team's done well, and that can have good knock-on effects further down the line, but you know, he will have desperately wanted to be in that seat, and I'm glad to see him back.
I was speaking to his manager actually in between this session and the last, just finding out how he was doing. He said, you know what, took off his helmet, he didn't talk about it, the health, the condition that he's recovering from or anything. It was just all about feedback about the car. Apparently he looked absolutely fine, and okay, only time will tell if he's made a sensible decision. And when Sam Bird was in the commentary box, you know, we talked to him about his injured wrist and whether it's a good idea to shortcut recuperation or not. We won't know until after this weekend, but hopefully, as you say, he's made the right decision. There's no one who can really stop a driver. If they want to go racing and they're cleared by the FIA, chances are they'll go racing.
Absolutely. 33 minutes and 40 seconds to go. John's been in touch. I'm listening and I'm fed up that you're back to rubbish commentary instead of concentrating on what you're paid to do. Please stick to F1. And we will. Well, there's no cars on track, to be fair, John, but now there are. There's Kevin Magnussen coming through the left-hander of turn 3. He is just starting a lap on the soft tyre, and now coming into the right-hander of turn 5. Latifi's on a lap as well, and his teammate Alex Albon's up in 8th place. Last race this for sorry, absolutely untrue. Last season this Williams for Nicholas Latifi. 3 years with the team, and he will be leaving at the end of this season, and I don't think he knows yet what his plans are for the future, but I would be surprised if they are Formula 1 race drive based, as Valtteri Bottas is going very quickly through sector 1. He's just on the fastest first sector of anyone. Now he's put on a set of softs, Valtteri Bottas, so he is looking pretty rapid right now. Jenny?
Just down a Mercedes, they're preparing for Lewis Hamilton to go out in his number 44 car. He's got a new set of soft tyres on. George Russell's just been sent out, I believe. So Hamilton ready to go and try and do a fast lap out there again.
Yep, Hamilton and Russell both out on the soft tyres. Sainz has just left the pits now, also on a set of the softs. Bottas's pace has obviously drifted away a little bit as the lap has gone on. He's not quickest of anyone coming through the middle sector, but he's still doing a pretty decent lap, this Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. The quickest soft runner at the moment is Albon in 8th place. Kevin Magnussen is about to try and threaten that, swings into the final couple of corners, out across the line, looks a little bit leery, but he goes into 5th place in the end, Kevin Magnussen, and that is 8/10 quicker than Alex Albon. So Magnussen up into 5th on a 1 minute 44.4. Bottas is picking up some more pace in the final part of the lap, swings it left underneath the grandstand, and then into the two right-handers of 19 and 20, then left at 21, out through the final couple of corners and across the line, and Bottas goes second fastest at 1 minute 43.431, 2/10 slower than Carlos Sainz, exactly 2/10 slower than Carlos Sainz, but that seems a competitive lap from Bottas, a second quicker than the Haas. Obviously we're about to see the front runners do their lap times, but midfield wise that feels more competitive than Alfa Romeo have been for a while. Yeah, agreed. That's a decent lap. I mean, it will suddenly start tumbling down the order as the circuit is starting to really evolve. Now we've got soft tyres on, the drivers are really starting to go for it. You get more and more rubber down, the cars are being pushed even further, the track sort of rubbers in, it starts to grip up, and the lap times begin to fall. So that's what's happening now. These are kind of qualifying based runs. This is really pushing the cars to the limit with a view to that all-important session on Saturday. It's a circuit that's very difficult to overtake on. Maybe not
not quite as bad as Monaco, as Sergio Perez has a massive tail slide, managed to stay out of the wall, but only just. Not quite as tricky as Monaco to get past another driver, so you can do it, but it is very hard, which means that qualifying becomes even more important.
Gus says, I'll take that back. Only adding seasoning after mixing meat explains why the commentating on BBC F1 is so full of flavour. That's more like it, Gus. 30 minutes to go. Jenny Gow.
I thought you were just being a little salty today. Just watching Max Verstappen, they're doing a few more setup tweaks, actually. They've got a little front pocket open on the car. A couple of mechanics with their hands in there just trying to get the setup better for him. He went out on the hard tyres, so let's see what he can do when they finally bolt on the softs.
Jenny Gow's reports from the pits, peppered with puns. 29 minutes and 45 seconds to go. Perez is 7/10 down on Sainz after the middle sector, despite being on soft tyres. This is not a good lap from Perez. Obviously, we had that moment up at turn 5, which probably cost him a decent chunk of time. Sainz is improving now. He's out on the softs. Leclerc still in the pits. Hamilton's on his out lap. Russell is... He did a good first sector, Russell, fastest of anyone, but I think he might have backed off now.
I think Perez just hit the wall there, did he? Did I just see that right? It looked like he might have just banged the wall with his left rear. I'll see if we get a replay. It might have just been a suddenly change of direction, but yeah, it was a tricky lap that from Sergio Perez. Crosses the line with a 144.6. So some way off, but Carlos Sainz though on a bit of a flyer.
Yeah, Russell has backed off in the middle sector, so he, I presume, made a mistake up at turn 7, which is the first corner at the start of the middle sector. Sainz is looking quick. Hamilton comes through sector 1 and he goes quicker than Sainz and Russell. Sainz is fighting the car.
He is so close to the walls.
Comes through the final couple of corners and out across the line and improves by half a second to do a 1 minute 42.751, 6/10 quicker than Bottas. Here comes Alonso to remain 6th, so no improvement there for Alonso. Lance Stroll through in the Aston Martin. He goes up into 6th place. Just getting a replay of Perez. It was a fairly heavy hit, that.
He did hit the wall, yeah. It's the front left and then the rear left, I think. So he went in quite... the team will definitely be having a good look at that, because that was quite a solid scrape, let's say. I mean, one of the challenges around this circuit, particularly when we're talking about qualifying, and particularly on these soft tyres, as Esteban Ocon also scrapes the wall in the same place, one of the challenges around this lap is really looking after your tyres, because it's very easy, particularly on the soft tyres, to take too much out of them in the early part of the lap and leave yourself with nothing come the final sector. So it's about balancing and just managing your performance in the first 2 sectors to make sure you've got enough when you need it towards the end.
So we've got 27.5 minutes to go as Charles Leclerc is out on circuit. He's gone out on the medium tyres, Charles Leclerc, so going to do some laps on the mediums before he goes for a quick lap on the softs, by the looks of things, which kind of makes sense not to just go straight out on the soft tyres. Get a few laps to get his eye in. Norris is out on the hard tyres. He's only done 7 laps, Lando Norris. So that's very interesting. Carlos Sainz is quickest. He's done a 1 minute 42.751. The 2 Mercedes keep threatening to go quickly. They do quick first sectors, but then lose pace in the middle and final sector. Haven't yet seen a competitive lap time from Max Verstappen, who's still in the pits, and Charles Leclerc, who's only just left the pits. So Sainz quickest at the moment. Yeah, Norris out on the hard tyre, which is quite interesting, because we didn't really get a soft tyre run from them earlier on. He's still on the same hards that he's been running throughout the whole session at the moment, Lando Norris. Jenny.
Yeah, it's a bit noisy down here. Sergio Perez has just arrived in the pit lane and they're just doing a little investigation into the damage that may or may not have been caused as the car collided. They're just saying, right, all the crew get out of the way. They're going to resend the car back out. There's a little bit of consternation amongst the team actually down here. A little bit of concrete just came off the rim where it's obviously scooped in some of the paintwork, but they've sent him back out, so clearly I don't think they're too concerned about that.
No, indeed. I guess they've got all night to properly sort it out, and if it's okay for now, then send it back out and get some laps in, because he needs them at the moment. Sergio Perez, he's down in 13th place. as Charles Leclerc comes through the final couple of corners. This is going to be his first lap of the session. He's on the medium tyre in the Ferrari, and he jumps up into second place straight away, 6/10 away from Carlos Sainz, which is a pretty solid effort for his first lap out. That's only about a 10th slower than Sainz managed on the medium tyres on his first run.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? I mean, I think this was a circuit that we probably would expect to see good things from Ferrari on paper. You know, they've got performance, had performance in places like Monaco. This should, to some extent, suit their car. So what their job is now is to fine-tune and tweak it and just eradicate those tiny little issues they were suffering with this morning, where the car was twitchy, understeer, particularly for Carlos Sainz. And if they can make small changes, nothing drastic, but small changes to iron out those things, well, they might have a decent car underneath them this weekend. So that could be something that could certainly get in the way of any early championship celebrations for Max Verstappen.
Bottas went straight off, but then carried on straight on, and then carried on at turn 16. Russell has improved his middle sector now. So this is a bit more like it from George Russell. Ocon's improving as he comes across the line to go second quickest, 6/10 away from Carlos Sainz, but it's still really only Sainz's lap time that's representative up at the front of the order. Russell coming through the final sector underneath the grandstand. Now to the final sequence of corners, rumbling over the curbs and then getting onto the power. Out through the final two left-handers, and George Russell goes second fastest, but only a 10th or so away from Carlos Sainz, and Hamilton is going quicker than Sainz at the moment. He's in the middle sector, but Russell goes second quickest, a 10th away from Sainz. Just getting a replay of Russell coming over the Anderson Bridge, gets onto the brakes, and a little lock-up of the outside right front. That'll cost him a bit of time because he was then nowhere near the apex for the left-hander.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Blocks.
Now that was George Russell's assessment of his lap. He's put himself second in the timesheets, but clearly with some issues, perhaps some of them down to his driving. But some positive signs from Mercedes. You know, that's George Russell sticking himself second just behind the Ferrari. We saw Lewis Hamilton with a decent lap time at the end of FP1. He's on another, well, he's on okay at the moment. It's actually tailed away, I think, this lap. But Mercedes have got a decent basis underneath them, I think, this weekend. And again, in the same way we talked about Ferrari, a few small tweaks here and there, and they might just be in the mix.
Here he comes across the line, and he goes third fastest, 4/10 away from Sainz, but he was going quicker in the middle sector, so maybe a bit scruffy. Bottas also did a classic Bottas boot at turn 16, where he goes into the runoff area and then just hoons it and spins it back around, as he's done so often throughout his career. It might be my favourite thing about Valtteri Bottas is how he recovers from going straight on into a runoff area. It's a niche thing to love about a man, but here I am. 22.5 minutes to go. Lando Norris on the soft tyre then, so let's see what McLaren have. He's coming through the middle sector, comes through the left-hander after the Anderson Bridge, and then down the back straight. We'll get his middle sector split here, and compared to Carlos Sainz, he is half a second away, so this looks like it's going to be slower than Ocon and Bottas. Might get into 7th place ahead of Lance Stroll. Coming into the final sequence now as he is about to turn left underneath the grandstand at turn 18, right at 19, then the right left at 20 and 21. Big, huge slide from Norris. Doesn't hit the wall or anything, but that would have cost him a huge chunk of time through the final two turns, and in the end Norris goes up into 9th place, but that was quite the slide.
It was, and he actually had a smaller version of that a couple of corners earlier, so yeah, a little bit of oversteer in that car, also quite a lot of bottoming. You could hear it going down the straight, really that bouncing or touching the tarmac, very bumpy circuit, and if you run the cars low, which you kind of want to do to get the best performance, you do, or you can, certainly in some cars, really suffer with the bumps. But Lando Norris running all of the upgrades for McLaren this weekend. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo doesn't have those yet and won't get them until at least Japan. They just didn't have enough ready to put onto both cars, and of course with Lando Norris being the driver that will remain with the team next year, Daniel Ricciardo leaving, it was deemed that that was the car that would get them. So this is really important, not just in terms of lap time, but really important data collection, getting feedback and a feeling from the driver, because not only does it, or can it help them this weekend, but it's their future direction of development that will be based on these upgrades. Do they work? Have they gone in the right direction? And all of these laps will be able to help them answer that question.
less than 21 minutes to go. Sainz quickest. Leclerc has... Well, Sainz has improved his lap time by 0.2 just now. Then Leclerc has gone second quickest, still on the medium tyres, 0.3 back from Sainz, but ahead of Russell and Hamilton, despite being on the medium tyres. Max Verstappen, Jenny, 3 laps on the board.
Yeah, and I'm trying to work out what they're doing, because they've got the wall of shame, as I like to call it, where they get a few of their biggest, burliest mechanics and stand them in front of the car so that we can't actually see what they're doing. Now, they've got their hands down the pocket, which is in front of the driver, and they have been spending a long time working there, trying to resolve whatever issue it is that Max Verstappen is feeling with that car. I've managed to find a side-on angle, but it doesn't really help to tell me too much about what they're trying to do. Only that Verstappen has 3 laps on the board, and he has been in the garage for some time now, so clearly not happy with what's going on with that car at the moment, out on track.
Also, Pierre Gasly leaping out of his car pretty urgently there as he came back in the AlphaTauri. What was that about? Was there a bit of smoke coming from there, or a bit of fire extinguisher?
It looked like somebody just unloaded a fire extinguisher on the back. Couldn't see what it was or what had happened, but yeah, he did get out pretty rapidly. But no major panic in the garage. The car rolls back in as Gasly stands by and looks on. It's certainly not on fire right now, so no panic.
Yeah, so not good news really for Verstappen. Only 3 laps done and down in 15th place on the hard tyres. Not that... Again, what was Andrew Benson's piece? The challenge Verstappen quiz show or whatever. I can't remember. It was much more eloquently written than that from Benson. But maybe this is the new challenge. Oh, there's a lot of kind of burnt stuff at the top of the...
Oh, yes.
At the top of the roll hoop on Gasly's car.
So there was an airbox fire then. So right above the driver's head, where the big air intake is, underneath that big T camera that sits on top, that has got incredibly hot. That is the direct air intake for the engine. It's a cooling intake for radiators, but it does get very hot in there, and all the paint bubbled up, crisped, and it may well be that is the paint, I think, that's caught fire rather than anything on the inside. So it's just got very, very hot in there. So a bit of investigation required there.
We're just watching Gasly come back into the pit lane on a replay, pulls in, and then he goes up on the jacks, and he's still sitting in the car. Engine stops, and he's about to be wheeled back into the garage. And then what's going to happen? And suddenly there's a bit of fire, is there? No, there's still no... Everything's still chilled there, and then suddenly, yeah, it goes up in flames, basically. The roll hoop area goes up in flames. How curious. Can paint catch fire? What a...
Well, it just did.
You know, I know. But surely it's not the paint. You know what I mean? Like, I know what you're saying, but...
No, it is the paint. It is the paint. It's the paint and the carbon fibre. So something's got very, very hot on the inside. There's lots of you know, there's a lot of heat from a Formula One car. That is right above where the engine is. It's a massive amount of heat running through there, depending what kind of cooling pipes, oil pipes, whatever they've got running through that area. If it's right the other side of a skin of carbon fibre that's just a few millimetres thick, it can burn through. You typically get it around exhaust. It happens reasonably regularly. Unusual to see it up there, I have to say.
Yeah, so Gasly back in the pit lane. Well, he was anyway before the fire. Leclerc has just done a cool down lap, and I think might be on another cool down lap here. He might actually be on another push lap here, Leclerc. I think he is. So Leclerc's on another push lap, but I don't think he's going to find any time. Verstappen's still in the pits. Perez on a set of soft tyres is just coming across the line now to start another run. This will be his third run, I think, or third attempt at a timed lap. This on these soft tyres. Leclerc did a 43.3, which was half a second slower than he managed previously. Perez coming through the right-hander of turn 5 now and heading down the back straight up towards turn 7. DRS wide open, and through the first sector, he's good. He's 100th down on Carlos Sainz as he comes into turn 5. This is a bit more like it for Perez, although sector 1 is probably the sector with the fewest amount of corners in it. And Perez needs to find a bit of form, I think, because he's suddenly starting to look a bit Gasly Albany.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, you know, I heard an interesting quote from Max Verstappen this week where he was talking about how he's so grateful that the team have managed to develop the car in a way that really suits his driving style. And I do wonder, I think that's how it's been at Red Bull, obviously, for some years, particularly with the last type of regulations, the last type of cars we had. But it's happening again now, and I think that may well be to the detriment of Sergio Perez. Go back, you know, to the early part of this season, Sergio was on fire, wasn't he? He was absolutely performing at the top of his game, got himself a new contract, and actually I think in the way the car has developed, the direction they've gone with that has suited one driver but probably negatively affected the other.
And Perez has backed off, so he's not going to be setting a lap time this time through. Andrea says, by the way, American racing drivers in F1, why is no one talking about Joseph Newgarden? He and Scott McLaughlin launched T-shirts with the slogan "Super License Eligible" on, which was very... I think they did a selfie. They were like lying on the sofa, both drinking a beer, saying we're Super License Eligible. I think Newgarden is 31, Will Power champion this year, 41. So you'd say they're maybe a little old potentially. I think that's why there's all the excitement about, or there was the excitement at least about Herta, because he's so young. Although I'm a big fan of Scott McLaughlin. I'd like to see McLaughlin have a bit of a go, because he was mega in V8 supercars in Australia, give it some jandal, but you're never quite sure what that really means, you know, like someone who's great in British touring cars isn't necessarily going to be an amazing single-seater driver. I don't know, I've never seen I haven't seen Plato in single-seaters recently. But I think McLaughlin's really sort of quite exciting. But yeah, a him or a Herta coming in would be quite cool. But obviously McLaughlin is Kiwi, so that doesn't really count for sort of getting an American into Formula One.
No, but there is a push for it, isn't there? There is a desire to have an American. I think the owners of the sport, the commercial rights holder, definitely have this very clear idea. They want to push the sport into America. We've got new races coming. We've got to Vegas next year. You know, there's a big push from a marketing perspective to try and grow the fan base, thinking of America as almost a relatively untapped market, and an American driver, but it has to be one that's successful, can really impact that. Coming in as an American driver and being at the back of the grid, I don't see that having a major impact anywhere in terms of growing fan numbers. People are not going to get behind somebody like that. But I think if we can get a driver, an American driver, into a successful team, which is why the Colton Herta thing would have been quite interesting. If he'd managed to join that Red Bull programme, who knows where it could have led, and it could have been a wonderful story. And let's not make no mistake, we're not talking about just bringing an American driver in just to make the numbers up. These are good drivers. Colton Herta, I think, would have been a really exciting addition to the grid.
Completely agree. Andrew Benson's piece was his thing was challenge Max Verstappen, pick a grid position and see if he can win. The answer is invariably yes. As ever, Andrew Benson a lot more perspicuous than I. That's a word I learnt in the week and wanted to try and use it more in conversation.
That's a good one. Yeah, well, you shoehorned that in there nicely.
Thank you. Jenny?
Do you want to explain what that means? Come on, do the full Susie Dent. You can't just use a word and throw it out there and not explain it.
You do all the time. You always say words that I don't know what they mean. And I always have to ask, what? Andrew Benson doesn't know that word. He doesn't know the word perspicuous. That's so exciting. It means...
must be related to the word conspicuous, one would imagine.
No, it's like... it means like to say something clearly and eloquently. So, which is why it never really applies to me. But yeah, I learnt it on an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I thought, that's a nice word. I want to use that more. Jenny's at AlphaTauri.
I am, and it looks like it may well be session over for both cars at the moment, because Yuki Tsunoda's car is up on the stands as well. Obviously, Gasly got out the car. It was a little fire on the left-hand side of the intake. So not the ideal session for them. And I've just come up to Ferrari, actually, to have a look at Charles Leclerc, who'd flat spotted the medium tyres that he was on quite significantly. So he must have, I didn't see what happened on track, but two healthy flat stops on the front, right and left tyres.
Gasly's actually back in his car now, so it looks like he may well be going to get back out on track. So hopefully nothing too serious there for AlphaTauri.
Well, Sainz is out on circuit. He's gone back out on the medium, so he's going to start doing his long runs. Russell on the mediums too. I feel like we didn't really get a look at... This is a very blurred... Verstappen's still in the pits, as we said, so it's a very, very blurred picture, this. I presume Leclerc's going to go out on the soft tyres, but I don't think we've seen a real lap time from Mercedes. We haven't seen a real lap time from, either Red Bull, really, because even Perez, okay, he's not been that, but he's made mistakes, so it's not even like he's getting the cleanest out of the car. So all we have really, I think, is Sainz's lap time, and even then he's only 2 tenths quicker than Leclerc, who went out on the medium. So Leclerc's lap time, if he goes out on the softs, will tell us a bit more, but it's all very, very blurry.
It is blurry, and it often is here because of the sort of rapid evolution of the circuit from the start of the session to the end. Even drivers doing laps on the same tyres, if they're happening at different times, different points of the session, can be wildly different in terms of representing the outright performance of that car. So Leclerc going out now on a soft set, doing it towards the end of the session, may actually skew the picture a little bit, I guess. Max Verstappen as well. He's in his car, Max Verstappen, but they are still working on it. So it looks like there's every hope they can get him back out. Still with the lineup of mechanics at the front of the car, trying to stop anyone seeing what's going on inside with the nose cone off. Lots of sensitive parts in there, and the teams are very protective, naturally, about their IP, about their designs. They don't want others to see what they've got, and you're not allowed in the regulations, like you used to be, to put up covers or screens or physical walls. So the best way to get around it is stick a bunch of people between the part you don't want anyone to see and the photographers.
Easy peasy. So we have got less than 10 minutes to go already, actually, and we're just getting a replay of Lewis Hamilton on his soft tyres coming down in towards turn 1. You can hear the of the bouncing, and then he's had a huge oversteer moment at turn 1, corrected it and gone off the circuit, kept it pointing the right way. I don't know how he hasn't spun that one. That was a great save, to be fair, from Hamilton, and he's on his long runs now. Jenny's still at Red Bull.
Yes, I am, and they're just putting the final touches on Max Verstappen's Red Bull car. Soft tyres on at the moment. They're just, sorry, I just stood on Alba's foot. Are you all right, Alba? You're going to survive. Yes, he says. That's okay. Sorry, my Spanish colleague who was standing beside me / behind me. I didn't realise he was there. Anyway, he's okay. Finishing touches going on to Max's car. Hopefully he'll get out. I've asked the team what's going on. They have not got back to me quite yet.
Very strange, because this is there were times earlier on in the session where you thought maybe this is planned, maybe this is just setup change, maybe this is, but there's no way they would have chosen to do 3 laps of running in FP2. Maybe they'll get 6 laps in, but 6 laps is now the maximum that they could do with 8 minutes to go in terms of 6 laps total. I think So
I think if it was anyone else other than Max Verstappen, you'd be saying this is really going to hurt the weekend, isn't it? But it's probably not.
It's challenge Max time.
Yeah.
Leclerc's out on a set of softs, so Leclerc is on an out lap now, coming into the final sector again. The track will have evolved a lot more than the past, when Sainz set his lap time and the Mercedes set their lap times. So we'll see what Leclerc can do. He's firing it up now, just coming underneath the grandstand at turn 18, then right at 19. And Leclerc, who was all set pretty much to win this Grand Prix at the last event in 2019, when the Ferrari team managed to sort of undercut Sebastian Vettel sort of accidentally or something. It was a very, very weird one, wasn't it? And Vettel ended up winning, but it was still a 1-2 for Ferrari as Leclerc comes down into turn 1. The Ferrari engine is the sound you can hear as he then gets on the power coming out of 3, heading towards turn 5, keeps it over to the left-hand side, down into 4th gear, and then back on the power. His first sector split compared to Carlos Sainz is quicker by over 1/10 of a second. So it's a good lap already from Leclerc in the first third anyway.
And it should be. We talked about circuit evolution. It is significant here. So the track will be getting quicker all the time, and they're taking advantage of that, putting these soft tyres right towards the end. So this should be faster, but how much faster is it going to be? Of course, it's very difficult to measure that circuit evolution from what we can see here. The drivers will get a feel of that, and the data will give some interpretation of how much the circuit has moved on, but it's very difficult for us to know exactly. But it should be faster, and Leclerc, as he comes towards the middle part of the lap, will get that split for the second sector in just a moment, and there it is, and he's still fastest. Not very much in it, but he's quickest so far.
Yeah, he's lost a 10th or so compared to Sainz in the middle sector. Now he's into the final third of the lap, Charles Leclerc. Coming underneath the grandstand now at turn 18, sorry. Then right at 19 and out into this final sequence. Going to be close between him and Carlos Sainz. Very good first sector, a little short shift from third to fourth to try and keep the back end in check as he got on the power. Final 2 corners out across the line. Remains second quickest. Only 0.2 slower than Sainz, but actually didn't really improve compared to his lap on the medium. So again, I would class that as a blurry outlook.
Yeah, agreed. And I wonder, I mentioned it slightly earlier on, where, you know, a little bit too much performance taken out of the tyres at the start of the lap can hurt you at the end. And I wonder if that's what happened there. His final sector, he seemed to lose, well, yeah, 0.2, maybe just more than that, 2.5. So, yeah, that's a sort of, if it is that can be obviously tweaked with driving style. If it's something more significant, if it's something in the setup of the car, they've got plenty of time overnight to go through all of this, reset, make tweaks. What you don't want to do is make any massive changes, because it really upsets the balance and the confidence that we've been talking about all day. But small tweaks, and just to really hone that in. It's not very far away, the Ferrari, that's what I would say.
Sebastian Vettel has just had a bit of a moment. I think he got so wide coming into turn 5, so close to the wall, that he ended up on the dirt when he tried to turn in. More Flovis on the car of Lando Norris, who's currently 10th quickest. I'll give you the order, actually. I haven't given you that in a while because it's been so...
Max Verstappen's out on track.
Ah, yes, because it's been so messy. The order at the moment is Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Ocon, the top 5. Bottas, Alonso, Perez, Stroll, Norris, the top 10. Vettel, Magnussen, Gasly, Zhou, Verstappen, the top 15. Albon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Schumacher, Latifi, the 20 drivers. But, as Mr. Priestley points out, Verstappen is on an outlap, as is Sergio Perez, so we'll see what Verstappen has got. Again, kind of going from a standing start into a quick lap on the softs is going to be a bit of a challenge for Verstappen. We'll see what he can do as he comes around the final couple of corners now, gets on the power through the quick 2 left-handers and down across the line now towards the first corner. DRS wide open. Means he's also not going to get any long running in this session.
Yeah.
Verstappen, and I think the same is kind of true of Perez. I don't think I've really seen Perez doing a long run. No, he's only done 9 laps, so no long running at all for Red Bull this evening.
Yeah, and it's a really tricky race to get prepared for in terms of strategy, because it's so often interrupted by safety cars and things like that. Almost always there's something, a safety car, a VSC, or even a red flag that can flip the race upside down. So you can plan all the strategies you like, but almost certainly on Sunday that's going to go out the window and you're going to be reacting to something that's happened. So, I mean, all they can do is plan their best strategy, the one they think will get them from lights out to flag dropping as quickly as possible, but almost certainly it won't work out that way on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening.
It's also worth pointing out that they will do long runs tomorrow in free practice 3, but that will be at 6 o'clock local time, 11 o'clock UK time, which is again unrepresentative. So this the only representative session that they have ahead of qualifying, and they're not really getting much out of it.
Well, don't forget, qualifying is by far the most important session, really. I mean, obviously the points are paid out on Sunday, but qualifying is really key at this particular circuit. So putting all that work into quali, if you can get yourself to the front on Saturday and start the race there on Sunday, you know, you've got half the battle is won already.
Verstappen's a bit adrift here of Carlos Sainz. He's into the final few corners. He was up in Sector 1 on Sainz's time, but he was down in Sector 2. 2 minutes to go. Verstappen goes 4th quickest.
Yeah, it was a bit scrappy, wasn't it?
1 minute 42.926. He's got 2 minutes to go, so he hasn't got another lap in him. No. That's it. That's Verstappen's only lap. He doesn't have time to do a cool down and go again. So that's Verstappen's only lap of the session, and he will end the session in 4th place. Now, he'd be able to find time if he did another run, I'm sure. But and Leclerc's only 0.2 down. Leclerc didn't improve. I've got no idea. This is a real Friday where you end up with no idea what the order or the deal is. Because, okay, Sainz's lap time, fine. Take that as read. Leclerc didn't improve on the soft tyres. That doesn't really make sense. Russell never got a lap together. Verstappen only did 5 laps. Hamilton didn't get a lap together. Perez didn't get a lap together. There's no information out there.
Well, it's kind of great, isn't it, for us? I mean, it's wonderful. The teams will be
It was
frustrated.
a waste of our day, wasn't it? We're just sat here talking for 2 hours and we haven't learnt anything.
Well, you started this session by saying don't bother dreaming anybody, and you've ended it by saying we've just wasted 2 hours of our life.
Am I not a positive person? This is brand new information to me. Crikey.
I think the teams will be frustrated, obviously, because data is king. They want as much data, as much information. That gives them stuff to work with tonight. But from a neutral's perspective, from a fan's perspective, from the perspective of a spectacle that we hope we'll get, this is great. Unprepared teams and drivers, that's what we want.
No, I entirely agree with that. Sign me up for that. The one piece of information Andrew Benson has provided is that Sainz is 0.3 seconds quicker than Russell in race trim, 3 laps in on the medium tyre. So that's some information. Leclerc's going again, actually. He's on the softs, coming through sector 1. Checker flag is out. Through the first sector, where is he compared to Sainz? He's up by almost a tenth. Not quite as quick as he managed in the first sector, but it was his third sector, really, that was tremendously sloppy. Middle sector wasn't great, but the third sector was poor from Leclerc, so we'll see what he can do this time around, pushing right to the end of the session, really leaning on the car. Great body language from that as he comes up towards the Singapore sling now, through the left-hander. Needs to be careful that there's no traffic around him. The drivers who have either taken the... Well, they won't have taken the checkered flag, will they? But he has got Ricciardo, Zhou, Gasly, Latifi, Perez all up in front of him as he comes out of the tight left-hander and down the back straight. Middle sector split, he's 7 tenths down. I think he has got traffic. Yeah, he's got the McLaren in front of Daniel Ricciardo. So that's scuppered Leclerc's chances of another run.
It has. I mean, it might be worth him sort of finishing the lap. The checkered flag's out, so this is his last moments on track. But no, he's backed out of it, and I think that'll be a cruise back to the pits. But all information is good information, and even if he didn't get the lap time, if he didn't get the car dialed in exactly how you want it, the information on how it's not working is as valuable, if not more so, than when things are just perfect, because it gives you a direction to go in. It gives you something to work with overnight. A lot of work will happen tonight, tomorrow, in the build-up, all morning in the build-up to qualifying, so all evening. It's a night race, I keep forgetting that. In the build-up to qualifying, so the cars will come apart. Because
you're still on European, because you're still running on European time, doesn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah. So there you go. So yeah, plenty of work, plenty of opportunity still. This is not the final picture, but it's an interesting one.
So, session comes to a conclusion. Carlos Sainz quickest at 1 minute 42.587. Charles Leclerc second. Sorry, my producer just said something that really tickled me. Why do we call it European time, not British time? It's just such a... Yeah. Charles Leclerc second. Russell third. Verstappen fourth. Hamilton fifth. Ocon, Bottas, Alonso, Perez, Stroll the top 10. Norris, Vettel, Magnussen, Gasly and Zhou the top 15. Albon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Schumacher and Latifi, the 20 drivers.
So it is a Ferrari 1-2 after free practice 2, with Max Verstappen only posting the 4th quickest time, but more curiously only managing 7 laps around this Marina-based street circuit this evening. So what did we learn from that session? Well, we learned not to put salt and pepper into your burgers before you make them into burgers. We learned what the word perspicuous means. So, we don't go away empty-handed from any of these sessions.
Charles Leclerc,
that's what I'm taking away.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc has just been complaining big time on the radio about traffic and stuff towards the end of that session. So he's saying, I can't do anything if you put me out in the traffic all the time. So that was just a little nugget at the end there.
Not wrong, is he? Really? So, Ricciardo 18th, Norris 11th. I mean, the whole picture seems to be muddied. McLaren, again, not having the best of days. I think they're being cautious with that new upgrade package that's on Norris's car. But even then, this one is really hard to read anything into, because the sessions have just been totally abnormal.
I've got nothing to say, Jen. We can't. There's nothing to...
Well, should we just come off air early? Great.
Oh, you're trying to produce the show now, Jenny.
No comment.
No comment. No, but you know what I mean? Because the Sainz thing, he did a good lap, but Leclerc's lap time was not representative. We saw him going quicker at the end, but then couldn't. He didn't go any quicker than he went on the medium tyres. Russell and Hamilton, there's a bit of promise in there. They always seem to be quick about halfway around the lap, but then fade away. So maybe that is their pace. But Verstappen, we don't know the pace at all because he's only done 8 laps in that session. Perez was nowhere, so no idea what the Verstappen/Red Bull pace is at all this weekend. So it's great going into tomorrow. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, as you say, game on.
Dreaming of it, I am.
Practice 3. Well, who wouldn't? We'll get underway at 6 p.m. our time, 11 o'clock in the UK. That's not European time, that's 11 o'clock UK time. Qualifying will be at 2 p.m, 9 o'clock in Singapore, and then the race gets underway on Sunday at 1 o'clock. So make sure you come back and join us. And as the guys say, really difficult to tell who's got the advantage. Is it going to be another one for Max Verstappen where it doesn't matter what you throw at it, he can still win it? Or is there hope? As I started this broadcast by saying that maybe it could be a Mercedes, maybe someone else will win here in Singapore. We will find out. Thanks for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.